Okay, so talking about physical recording gear, I mean, like your computer and interfaces and I don't know, keyboards, MIDI keyboards, speakers, and stuff like that. It's like, I mean, I went through so many different things over the years. I remember when I was young, it was like an old PC, and I was using those little mics, those little stand mics that they had that you plug directly into the computer. Sounded terrible. And I tried to record a 30 Years Too Late record when I was a kid with that thing. And yeah, it didn't sound good. I have lots of demos that I did from when I was a kid with, all of the different types of setups I guess I had when I was recording. Um, so so I'll do like more details on what kind of software you would want and stuff like that, and what I think works for me and everything like that, and what I've tried. I mean, so originally when I was a kid, it was like an old PC, crappy mic, and it works for making demos. I mean, sometimes I'll still record demos just with my phone, really quick. If I'm in a room and I got a good riff, I just hit a quick record on my phone and lay it down. And but when it comes to actually recording, it's like the first thing you'd want to make sure you have is a really good computer, right? I mean, you have to have a decent laptop. It can be Mac, it can be PC. I go with Mac. I actually spent, like a year ago, I spent some time trying to build this PC, and I thought I was going to use it, because I like playing some games for a while, and I was kind of bored and living out here in the bush, and so I said, I'm gonna play some video games, and so I played a bit of PC games, and I thought I was gonna also use it for recording. I said, so I built this. I would love to only have one computer instead of two, so I built it, had it all going. I put all my Pro Tools and stuff. Man, I spent days like transferring all of my software and stuff over to this PC, and man, I must have used it for about a week. Yeah, but after about, probably like a day, after one day of using Pro Tools on the PC, I hated it so badly. Like, it just ran terrible. It would crash occasionally, it would glitch out. There was just so many things. So it's like now I only record with Mac. I think Mac is really good for, like, I don't know, Photoshop and recording and stuff. And so, I mean, realistically, the better of a computer you can use, the easier you're going to have a time working with it, though. It's got to have a good processor, right? Like a CPU, and that's pretty much your main thing, and some hard drive space. An SSD hard drive would be very important, too. So it's like you get a laptop or whatever it is, as long as it's got a good CPU and an SSD, you should be all right. Maybe enough RAM or something, but it's like you can use a PC. It depends on what software you're using, too, right? I mean, Pro Tools definitely runs better on a Mac, but it still will run on a PC. You got to fight with it sometimes, I guess, As for like the recording stuff, it's like, man, when I was a kid, I used Cool Edit Pro. I had a hacked version of Cool Edit Pro, and I remember it was licensed to a guy named Peter Questguard, and I just thought it was so funny. That's why there's a Freedom song that I did on the second record called Peter Questguard, and I called it that because it was just this weird keyboard demo I had done. Recorded it with Cool Edit Pro when I was probably 15, I think, and it was with the crappy little mic. You can actually hear kids in the background. I mean, if you hear the song's called Peter Questguard, but you can hear kids, my little brother and sister, in the background. I recorded it. Just smashing away in this old Casio keyboard. But anyway, so I first used Cool Edit Pro, then I got into using Fruity Loops, or FL Studio, I guess you call it. I used Fruity Loops, I don't know, whatever. Sounds funny saying Fruity Loops, I guess. Maybe it sounds a bit more legitimate when you call it FL Studio, you know. So I used Fruity Loops, but I would only really make drum tracks in it. And actually, before that, what I would do is I was downloading drum tracks, like just finding a 30-second sample of a drum track, and then I would loop it over and over in Cool Edit Pro. And then I was kind of stuck writing a song to whatever drum track I had. And I would try to mix and match, you know, I have one drum track or try and combine some drum tracks. But they were always these like 20, 30-second drum loops, you know, doof doof ch, dooka dooka ch, doo doo ch, dooka dooka ch, you know, and so it was funny, you know. It was a fun. I did that. I mean, man, since I was a little kid, it was always go to school, right after school, or go skateboard a bit, and then when I was home, I was just, you know, writing my own little songs, you know. And some of them were turned out later to be used later in Skullfist and stuff. And even with my own stuff, some of it's pulled back from, you know, stuff when I was a kid. Just liked riffs and or even lines or something, you know, lines of lyrics. And so now it's like there's so many different types of, you could use, you know, there's that Ableton, people use that. There's Cubase, people are using that. But it's like for me, I use Pro Tools. I think it's the most common one used also. And from what I've tried in the past, Pro Tools works the best. I mean, I understand it the best. It's not going to be like that for everybody, you know, but for me, that's how it is. It's like, it just makes sense in my brain, you know? And the other thing that's really great about it is, like, if you are going to be working with other people in sessions, like, generally, like, a studio, like, a lot of dudes are using Pro Tools, you know? So it's like, that's going to be the most common, at least if you're handing off your session to someone else and, you know, they're mixing it or something like that. Like, Pro Tools is the best, I think, in that regards. But I mean, you know, you can argue that forever. You know, everyone has their own preference, so it doesn't really matter in the end, you know. It's like, same for interfaces. I think I mean, I use an Apollo Twin, and Apollos are kind of like decent ones. The only reason I actually got it was that somebody told me to get it. They said, if you're going to record, because I wanted to record the Skullfist vocals on my own, because going into a studio is like, man, I can really only sing for an hour, you know. So it's like, I didn't want to go back and forth to a studio and waste everybody's time, you know. So I recorded the vocals from home, and they suggested, you know, the studio, it just said, you know, get this Apollo Twin. And that's what I use for an interface. But I mean, you could use anything, you know, like JJ in his place, he has two. He's got one multi-channel one for his drums, and he's got a smaller one just for doing vocals. It's like, so as far as interfaces, I mean, I use an Apollo Twin, and, you know, I only plug in my mic and my guitar and bass directly into it. And it depends on what you're going to record, you know. You can use drum samples. I just record the actual drums, you know, and I don't really like the sound of drum sound. I mean, they do sound a lot better than they used to and stuff, but like, I'm really not a fan of like quantizing drums and those things like that. And like, I know it's like, I mean, for my own stuff, you know, with the Skullfist stuff, it's like, it's never really the sound that I like. But I think that the sound that I like, most people probably would complain about. It's like, I almost sometimes wish that I could, you know, go back to the heavier than metal days, you know, and just record the things on our own and stuff. And I almost wish I could do that for Skullfist. But anyways, I do it for my own music now. And so I record real drums. I don't use samples or anything like that and stuff. I don't even know how to plug in samples, to be honest. But so I have two interfaces, right? I have my Apollo, and you can actually, the cool thing about this is you can plug in an extra interface with like this ADAT. It's called ADAT. It's an ADAT cable. You can plug in these kind of other interfaces. So I got this 8-channel one that is it 8? I don't know, maybe it's 8-ish channels. And so I plugged that into the interface. And, and then that's how it basically takes my first interface, my Apollo. It's only got 2 channels, but now it's kind of added 8 more channels so I can do my drums. I used to have a separate interface, and I would have to switch back and forth between interfaces in like Pro Tools, and it would close Pro Tools, reopen it, and it was always a pain, when I was, a lot of times when I'm writing songs, it's like sometimes I'm like building the song as it's going, so like I'll record a drum part and then, see how it sounds with the guitar that I put in, and then I don't like it, or I might end up changing the guitars. It's like so many different things, and it's kind of like, because I'm playing every single instrument, everything that I do is like, it has to be like really streamlined really fast. I have to be able to get in and do changes and pick, record this instrument, do this. I got to be able to do it in a good amount of time, because it's like, it's a pain. It's a lot of work, trying to write like parts for everything, and so it's, if I could say shave time off of my overall, if I could shave time just by having to set up random things over and over, it's like, it just gives you more energy to do whatever it is you're doing, I guess, which probably works in any situation. If you have to do 5 tasks just to get to the one thing that you wanted to do, it's like, you spend 10 minutes trying to get to that task, and then you're really using the energy for it. And I think it's probably pretty important for anybody, if you're trying to be efficient and achieve things. It's like, it's really good if you can just say, I want to be doing this, and then there's nothing stopping you at that exact moment. You don't have to set things up, and I've always found that, like, same with my drums, when I leave everything set up all the time. So if I say to myself, I'm upstairs and I'm like, I really want to record this drum riff or drum beat, I guess, I can go downstairs, and it's like, it takes me only 30 seconds to a minute, and then I'm recording. So it's like, I think it's like, it's really nice to be able to, when you want to do something, that you can just go directly to it. You don't have to take it out of a drawer and open it up out of a package and then reassemble something here and move something out of the way to get to that. And I think, like, especially when it comes to making music, it's like, sometimes you really want to lay something down right away. You got an idea in your head, and you're like, man, you could wind up forgetting that idea, or it becomes altered and maybe not as good as it would have been had you been able to record that right out of your head, instantaneously, versus spending the minutes or time turning, or maybe not turning on things, you got to turn stuff on, but setting things up and plugging in chords, and or adjusting things or moving things out of the way. And I don't know, I'm just rambling again, sorry. So for things like interfaces, man, you can get away with pretty much anything. Honestly, you can. Like, vocal mic, if you're recording vocals, I tried lots of vocal mics, and every time I tried one, I kept thinking it would make me sound like a better singer, and still sounded terrible. So eventually I had to admit that I just could not blame the mics anymore. I still try to sometimes, but could blame the pop filter maybe, or something. Blame the rain. You can blame anything on the rain, I guess. So for mics, man, I have this Warm Audio mic, and it's like a U47 Mach mic, I think. 47, yeah, like a Newman Mach mic, and it's from Warm Audio. I think I paid like $1,500 or something like that, and I use that, and I've never had a problem. I recorded the Skullfist vocals with this mic, and I believe it was the same studio that told me this is a good mic to get. You don't want to get a junky mic, but I know some guys still sing through like 57s, SM 57s. I've heard that some people, maybe I'm full of shit right now, I don't really know. No, but I did read that, man. I read that there were some guys, like professional musicians, that like singing through 57s and stuff, you know, and some guys just like how their voice comes out with it. And I mean, so you don't even have to do what I did. You know, I spent $1,500 on a mic thinking it was going to make me sound like Mariah Carey, and tell you, did not make me sound like Mariah Carey. Maybe if Mariah Carey smoked a bunch in her 20s and drank a bunch in her 20s and was a terrible singer who never sang ever, and then got punched in like the throat by Cher or something, then I could say I sound like her. I think you gotta have a good pair of speakers too. It's like, I mean, they don't have to be expensive, but something that is considered like studio monitors. I do really notice the difference between, you know, I used to just do stuff with my headphones all the time, and I remember I had these old computer speakers, and I mean, maybe you could get away with doing it, you know, it depends. I mean, I guess if you're not mixing, you don't really need anything too much, and, you know, it's like, I got these little black, what are they called, Fostex or something, man. I paid a couple $100 for them, and I've never felt like I needed to buy. After a while, you start knowing your speakers. You know, it's like you know that your speakers are more bassy than these ones, and your headphones are more high mids or something like that. And I always DI bass. Bass always goes directly in for me in everything that I do. It just goes right into the Apollo. I never use an amp. Actually, with guitars too, I don't. I use a guitar rig, and I just play with sounds on there until I can find something that suits the song that I'm working on. And I never go through. I'm really like, I want to have a minimal setup, like in everything. I think like, man, even in my own life, like I could seriously tell you how many pairs of socks are in my drawer, or how many pens are upstairs in my kitchen or something. You know, there's actually one pen in the kitchen, but it keeps moving back and forth from the mailing room, like the room where I ship orders and stuff. And so yeah, I'm really like, I don't want to have things that I don't need when I'm recording, and just in general. It's like, that's why I only ever have, you know, two guitars. Like I have two electrics. It's just one for standard tuning and then one for Skullfist, and I never felt like I needed more. And then if I wanted to upgrade, I would just sell the old one, and then, you know, I would never keep more than that. So it's like, guys, you get compressors, and they're definitely, you know, it works, no doubt. But for me, not even really a huge fan of a lot of compression. I've never been a huge fan of a lot of compression, and lots of times I hear stuff, especially newer music, and it just gets so squashed and so loud, and it's not something I've ever really been interested in. So, I mean, you got to, you know, use some compression, but I've always found that the compression in Pro Tools is just enough compression, you know. I would never felt like I needed too much of it, or lots, or multiple layers of it or something. So I don't own compressors and stuff. I literally just have, you know, my interface, my computer, my speakers, the mic, and like I said, all my guitars and bass go directly in through, and I use Guitar Rig and just play with sounds until I find something. You know, and then I have, a MIDI keyboard. MIDI. I don't know if they're MIDI or MIDI. MIDI sounds like I'm saying it wrong. It definitely MIDI. I don't know. But anyways, you got a MIDI keyboard. I feel like it is MIDI. And you can plug in lots of stuff with that, you know, and there's so many cool synths and piano sounds and organs and stuff that I think are pretty darn good nowadays. I think when using a MIDI keyboards years ago, maybe it didn't sound as good, but I think for me now, they sound pretty darn good, you know, and I'm not complaining. Although I don't think the actual piano, acoustic piano, will always sound better off its own. It was a pain. I got one not that long ago when I first moved out here in the bush, and I had to hire someone to go and pick it up, and the guy that I got it from, it totally lied about it because I couldn't go and actually test it out. So by the time I got it, anyways, it was a big pain in the butt for me there. But so yeah, I guess, you know, it's like, and if you're recording drums, recording drums is a pain in the ass. I learned a lot from doing that. I think the biggest thing that I ever figured out was the goddamn the hi-hat bleed. The hi-hat bleed, man. I can't even believe it. I can't believe how hard it is to not have your hi-hat so drowning in your snare drum. And you can see on my kit, like I've always been pushing the hi-hat further and further away, trying to put the cymbals up a little bit higher. And sometimes I feel like I'm trying to set them up like monkey arm JJ there. And so it's the same thing with your ride cymbals. Like you got to push it back far away from that floor tom mic. And actually recently on the setup right now, I haven't done drums in a few days, but I have to take the floor tom microphone. I have to put it on a separate mic stand because it starts rattling. The floor tom is so heavy that it rattles the mic, and you end up with a really crappy sound on your floor tom. So these are kind of things to think about, and it's like, and you get a hugely different tone from where you put that mic on a kick drum, and it's cool. Just, I remember, I don't know what I'm doing, everything that I've been learning to do, I've just been, Googling it and YouTubing it and stuff, so I think it's, but recording drums, one of the main things was like keeping the hi-hat and the ride away, putting the floor tom mic on a separate mic stand, not on a clip, and was a huge thing. And obviously, keeping the cymbals as high as you can and getting those, top mics, I guess, wherever the hell they are. I don't know. I think I read in an article or something that told me to put them kind of like that. And it makes sense. So it picks up the ride and picks up the hi-hat, and then you're trying to not have your hi-hat go through your snare mic, right? And in total, I use 7 mics. All of the mics are pretty much 57s, actually, except the kick drum mic. I can't remember what it is, and I can't remember. Those 2 overhead mics are Rode, maybe NT1s or something like that. I don't know. They were recommended, so I just went with that. And but if you're doing drums, samples is another thing, man. As I said, I don't really do it, but you can do it though. Like there's lots of different types of drums you can, and they're pretty good. Like they sound. I would really be careful with the velocity. If you got the same, that's what I always hated about sampling stuff, man. The snare drums, the same volume every single hit, and it drives me crazy when I hear it in a song. It just bugs me. Same thing with the kick, like you got to have the velocity there. But then again, it's all preference, I guess, right? It's just absolutely just my preference, I think, is, yeah. Although, like I said, with Skullfist stuff, there's always samples and stuff in there, and I always wondered if I could get away with the next cut. Lately, I've been wondering if I could get away with doing a Skullfist record, without all of that junk. And I don't know, but who knows? We'll see, right? We will see. This is even more of a ramble than the last one. I think at this pace, the next video is going to be like 40 minutes, and then who knows, right? But like between writing songs and recording music, it's like once you can see your tracks, once you're looking at guitar tracks and you see them and you have places to put drum tracks, it's like it really, man, it just like it so much opens up everything, and you start writing in a completely different way. It's like but even when I was young, I always thought that it was like, it felt smart. Well, it just felt like a good natural progression to me to like want to play every instrument, or at least have a good knowledge base, where I could write, because I don't play a lot of piano, and I'm honestly, man, I'm not very good at it, but when I need to use the piano, I can use it. I know how it works. I know what to do on it, and I know what would be a complementary piano part, and then I just figure it out, the stuff on piano that I do need to use. Anytime that I'm feeling like I'm writing something, and I say, man, I could do a piano part here or something, or sometimes you write something just on the piano or whatever, and so I think it's like recording is especially after like kind of getting my own small studio together. And it's like I said, man, it's totally not a good studio, you know, it's not professional. It does what I want it to do. And if I ever wanted it to do something else, like I don't want to make radio songs, you know, so I don't need a studio that can make radio songs. So it's like anything that I'm interested in doing, I have the ability to do it on my own. And I think it's like, I don't know, man, some guys love working with other people, you know, and I don't, you know, I get their pros and cons to everything. And for me, it's like, I really like doing it by myself. And I find, you know, like I said, having the studio stuff set up is like an always on the go where I can just hit a button and then I'm recording right away, you know. And so if you got to throw out your bed in order to fit in the gear, man, just do it, you know. I've done it. I slept on a tiny little cot in a bedroom once, just so I can fit my music stuff in there. So I was sleeping on this time. One time I got a bunk bed, but there was no bottom bunk. I just took out the bottom bunk and I put the drums underneath there, and then I slept above the drums on a bunk bed. And the thing that sucked about it was that every time I had to pee in the middle of the night, I had to climb down this bunk bed. And there were these little metal railings for your feet, man. There's your bare feet, and it's like 3 a.m. You gotta take a leak. And yeah, man, you'd be up. I'd be like wide awake by the time I finished peeing and climbed back up there, and mine, you know, those terrible little metal things jamming into my feet, you know. It's like just a ladder, but they were so small that the pressure of your foot going on in the middle of your foot kind of hurt your feet. And I'd wake up, be like wide awake, you know, by the time I tried to go back to bed. That's a ramble there too, for sure. So I just mean like it's nice, man, and you know, and writing music, man, it feels really good. I don't know. There are trillions of things that you can do with your life in life. And there are trillions of experiences that would lead to, you know, like a chemical reaction inside your head and, you know, maybe make you happy or whatever it is, you know, you're looking for. And, but I have yet to find anything that feels as good as when I finish a song and I can listen back to it to myself. There's about a 20-minute period maybe or something like that. There's a small period in which, you know, when you finish writing something and you listen back to your demo for the first time and you feel good about it. Just, I don't know, it's just a nice feeling. So I haven't found any, you know, if you got any suggestions, I haven't found anything better. Yeah, I guess that's all I got. That's the end of this ramble. This was a long one, and if you stuck it through, well, I thank you for it. If you did make it all the way to the end, tell me in the comments by writing this word. Hot dog phone. Tell me if you made it. I'll know if you made it if you write hot dog phone.